Like, I feel like, Eddie Murphy wouldn't be Eddie without Richard.
Well, I think a lot of them try to even look like Richard.
Right.
A lot of them cats, Steve Harvey and Tim Reed, they all try to look like Richard Pryor.
I'm gonna tell black people something that's different about whites that you didn't know. And I'm gonna tell white people something about black people that you didn't know.
Some white dudes you cut in front of don't play that shit though, right? You cut in front of them, all right, cut the
Nothing like that ever happens or doesn't happen for a reason, so I was disappointed.
Many aspiring comedians look up to Steve Harvey, and not only guys. The main reason why these individuals look up to Harvey is because of how successful he has been over the years, but it appears that his life story may be more dishonest than anyone could have ever imagined. According to recent internet news stories, it appears that Steve Harvey's comedic delivery and overall outlook on life may have simply been a subpar replica of another star. Given that Harvey has virtually replicated Richard Pryor's appearance, one can infer that the accusations that he is a copycat may not be entirely unfounded. Let's examine the paper trail to discover how similar these men may have been before making a decision.
I met Richard Pryor at the ABC Comedy Awards. I was the first, when I met him, when I got through hugging him and we talked, I went behind the bar, I cried for 20 minutes.
Richard Pryor is well known in the entertainment industry, not only for the achievements he accomplished during his lifetime as a pioneer in putting black people on the map of the world through his comedy, but also because many other entertainers appear to have taken a page out of his book. However, it appears like Steve Harvey may have grabbed far more than one page from the icon's book. In fact, it is beginning to seem as though Steve may have made a profession out of imitating Pryor's way of life. While choosing an amazing person in your field to model your career after is generally a good idea, it appears Steve Harvey may have gone a bit too far. Harvey's jokes started to make it clear that he aspired to follow Richard Pryor in the entertainment business. Yes, despite the fact that both guys are and have always been experts in their industries, it was clear how similar their jokes were to one another. This seemed to be so obvious that you may struggle to identify who told the joke if you overheard them both telling it. What I mean is this. Richard Pryor discussed the culture shock that white people experienced when they realized how differently black people spoke to them in a previous interview.
They found out niggas could talk other than do-wah-ho. They got scared to death. You know, like one day somebody said, talk. I've been wanting to tell you something. I beg your pardon?
Have you ever noticed how Pryor has a certain way of speaking when cracking jokes? Well, shortly after Pryor's interview gained greater notoriety, Steve also shared a joke with us that was remarkably similar.
Don't put the word hello in the Ebonics dictionary. You know how many ways we got to say hello? It'll take up 5-6 pages. Yeah. Hey, now! What up? Hey, look here!
It almost seems like Pryor's joke sounded like an original version of Steve's. However, I'm not sure if it's just me. Even if that analysis is incorrect, it is suspicious that both grades had told jokes that were so similar to one another in such a brief period of time. Apart from the fact that both comedians appear to have a similar approach to making people laugh, there are a few other facets of Richard Pryor's life and persona that Steve seems to have adopted, or should I say embodied. Many people have recently begun to discuss the more obvious similarities between Pryor and Harvey after an industry veteran brought up the fact that Harvey did attempt to resemble Pryor. This spread like wildfire after John Witherspoon revealed in an interview that a few other comedians, including Steve, did make an effort to resemble Pryor.
Like, Eddie Murphy wouldn't be Eddie without Richard.
Well, I think a lot of them try to even look like Richard.
Right.
A lot of them cats, Steve Harvey and Tim Reed, they all try to look like Richard Pryor.
Does it seem unlikely that he might have been playing around with some of the gags in the comics if someone who works in the same field as these men claims that Harvey deliberately tried to seem like Pryor? Indeed, some social media users have been brazen enough to draw attention to the physical similarities between the two legends. One person wrote, "Is it the mustache or comedy itself that makes Steve Harvey and Richard Pryor blessed memory so alike, or they actually both look alike?" Harvey admired the comic and grew even more certain of his decision to emulate Pryor after seeing Pryor in person. It was later found that Harvey may have customized his appearance and talent to way Richard Pryor lived. There have been many stories about celebrities meeting their idols and having sad outcomes, but Steve Harvey was fortunate enough to meet his comedic idol, the incredibly inspirational Richard Pryor, without any negative outcomes. While some viewers might not be aware of Harvey's early stand-up performances before he had a successful film and television career, the iconic comic served as the model for Harvey's clever storytelling and punchlines.
When I first met Richard Pryor, I have a picture of the day I met him. It was at the ABC Comedy Awards in 1995.
The host comedian shared a post on his Instagram stories about how he met and reacted to his comedy hero. This lady said, "Steve, do you know who you're standing in front of?" I said, "No, who?" She said, "Turn around." I turned around and it was Richard Pryor. I bent over, shook his hand. He said, "I heard a lot about you. Sick told me you pretty funny." I said, "I love you, man." I thank you, because he was the whole reason I got in comedy. You know, I got through talking with him. The ABC Comedy Awards was in this huge hangar they had decorated. I went behind the bar, cried for 20 minutes. The late comic and stir-crazy actor Richard Pryor had a significant impact on subsequent comedians, as Steve Harvey's story about him suggested. Although Pryor's ability to turn tragedy into humorous anecdotes is still pretty unique, other black comedians like Martin Lawrence, Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, and Eddie Murphy have all discussed Pryor's influence on their stand-up comedy careers, and it's sometimes very obvious in their act. Each of Harvey, Murphy, and Rock had a special memory of meeting Pryor and hearing him compliment or acknowledge their comedic performances. The fact that these folks gave Pryor such high ratings should tell you everything you need to know about the impact he had on their lives. But it wasn't just their lives. It was aimed at all black people's lives. Pryor spent his formative years performing stand-up in bars and penning TV scripts. He achieved success by making appearances on shows like Mike Douglas and Ed Sullivan. Soon after, Pryor's fame would land him invitations to the most prestigious gatherings and stages around the globe. Before he passed away, he was even invited to the White House. Then, according to his son, he left the stage mid-set during a routine performance at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas one night in 1967, after realizing he was playing for primarily white tourists. According to his son, he said, "I feel inauthentic because the majority of the audience is made up of white people." Pryor had no idea that he was about to undergo a total transformation, as his comedy turned into a means for him to build something greater than himself. He appeared to have had enough of operating inside the system and performing for mainly white audiences after years of doing so, and he appeared to want to be true to both himself and his identity as a black man. He learned that his son wants to be himself. The cartoonist traveled to Berkeley, where he was motivated by the anti-war and counterculture activities there, and by the Black Panther. His comedy and comedy itself were eternally altered by his political and social revolution. He added an essential and sincere realism to his comedy by addressing issues like racism, sexuality, slavery, and police brutality. According to reports, Pryor may utilize humor to help people realize their own flaws and vulnerabilities so that they can laugh together rather than at each other. According to reports, when he consciously chose to stick it to the man, his life was forever transformed. Some people even claimed that at this point, he abandoned his clown identity and adopted a whole new one. One social media user wrote, "It's easy to pinpoint the moment when Richard Pryor killed the clown and gave birth to the philosopher crusader." This occurred not long after Pryor appeared in the film The Toy, in which he played the role of the white child's toy. As you can anticipate, this wasn't a job that most people thought was appropriate for a legend like Pryor, and some even criticized him for it.
I
know what I want.
He likes the Wonder Wheel. Let's blow it up right away.
The black man.
One person commenting on the poster of the movie said, "The poster was interesting as well. I never understood why Pryor agreed to star in this film, especially considering his work during the 70s. The fact that Pryor refused to continue living in Hollywood under the thumb of the law after that seems to have served as the wake-up call he needed. As a result, he went on to become one of the richest black men and manage his own production company at Columbia. In 1983, Pryor and Columbia Pictures agreed to a $40 million deal under which Pryor would launch his own Indigo Productions and make million-dollar films over a 5-year period. This was only one of the many characteristics that helped him stand out among other comedians and, consequently, black people worldwide. The fact that he brought attention to many of the problems that black people were dealing with is an additional, more concrete reason why these folks aspire to be like him. Topics that would normally be taboo for any other performer to discuss. Steve Harvey no longer seems to be following that aspect of Pryor's life or decisions, though. But does this imply that he might have only been interested in Pryor's life insofar as it had the potential to net him the bag? Thanks for watching our video. Make sure to subscribe our channel for more celeb videos. Don't forget to like and comment. Also share it with friends and family.